Hello and welcome to The Public Good. This is Dejia James from Partnership for the Public Good, or PPG, which unites over 340 community organizations working to build a better Buffalo. We're delighted to join you every Tuesday morning at 11:30 a.m. on Power 96.5 FM and Mix 1080 AM. You can also watch full video of every show on our YouTube page. Follow PPG Buffalo on Facebook and Instagram for more information on how to access video and full podcasts of the show. And of course, you can always get great information on our website, ppgbuffalo.org. Before I introduce our guest for today, I want to highlight a way you as a listener can interact with us here on The Public Good. We want to hear your thoughts about how we can better the community, about your opinions, feedback on the show. Email us at info@ppgbuffalo.org to let us know your ideas for change. We'd love to hear any community organizations that you like, initiatives you believe need more spotlight, or any other commentary. Email us once again at info@ppgbuffalo.org. Be sure to let us know where you're listening from and who you are. So I'll get into the show finally for today. Today, I am joined by Alia Williams with Voice Buffalo, and we're here to talk about something that I think is important to both of us as younger people in our generation. But we want to talk about youth initiatives. This is going to be the first, I believe, feature from our community agenda here at Partnership for the Public Good. For those who don't know, we have a community agenda process where you as community can bring to us policy or changes you'd like to see in the city, in the county, on even the state level in some cases. And we try to help implement those policy changes on whatever level of government and give any technical or research support that we can to make that initiative happen. And Alia brought to us an initiative to increase youth services funding from the city of Buffalo. And we'll get a little bit into why she has that agenda item. But I just want Alia to introduce herself, let us know where you're from, how you got kind of into activism work, some of the stuff that you do. I just always like to inspire people listening on the show that they can kind of be empowered to do different types of things. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So my name is Alia. I am born and raised in the city of Buffalo, as is most of my family. How I got into this work, like most people, I was always interested in advocacy, politics, all of that, Black liberation. But like most people, the way I actually got into this work was through 2020, the uprisings, and being out doing protests, hosting vigils, and meeting other like-minded people.
Yeah.
And then from there, I've just been in the thick of it, and happily in the thick of it. So, yeah.
That's so funny. I think uprisings also got me into work that I was doing. But for me, it was back Trayvon Martin, which is there's just always that marked incident, right, that happens throughout all the different generations that is sparks some portions of it to no, we have to do something about this. Yeah. It's sad that it still continues to happen, and there's still, but I find it fuels kind of that machine of social change also for us to continue to be able to get people, because I think this is a very fatiguing type of thing to get into.
Yes.
And there's been elders that are way older than us that have been doing this since they were our age too. And yet the fight continues. And I think it's necessary for us and even people younger than us to kind of take up the mantle and continue doing the work. So it's unfortunate that these events keep happening to fuel that. But I'm just glad that there kind of are marked events that help us kind of recruit more people into the general fight, even though it shouldn't be happening in the first place. But I wanted to just circle back on what you were talking about in terms of Black liberation and things like that. Do you find that that's something you've always cared about? Do you think, I think when I grew up in Buffalo, at least for me, Blackness was always a central concept, Sankofa and Juneteenth and all these different things were just things I knew about my entire life, and I didn't realize other people didn't grow up with those things until I went to college or like got exposed to people from New York City or other areas that are like, what is that?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I thought we all as a people like knew what this stuff is. Do you think that influenced you at all? Like that kind of Black pride that Buffalo kind of like has to do work like this or like influence you when you were younger?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it first influenced my parents, especially my mom. And then it like dragged over to me. I grew up a lot with my parents talking a lot about Black issues, whether it be nationally or locally.
Yeah.
And then having a solid Black community here in Buffalo and just getting to experience Black people every day of all kinds, and just knowing and seeing the beauty in that. That's something that like I've always been proud of. But then also turning on the TV or looking through my phone every day and seeing Black struggle is something that is like very much in vivid memories in my childhood.
Yeah.
Until I got older, I didn't like define what the work I was doing and interested in doing as Black liberation.
Yeah.
But it's always been something that has been on my mind and always will be.
Absolutely. I think especially when we were growing up, the term like social justice and it being trendy was like a thing. So it was easy to feel like I'm just a social justice warrior or whatever. But then I do think I associated that with Blackness from the beginning. I am Black. I can't help but do that. But I don't think I really thought about Black liberation until college and like a little bit later, where I was able to fully define those things, fully understand the past work beyond the surface of like Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks and those things, right? And where I was able to kind of entrench myself deeper into literature and theory and different things like that. But I'm wondering also, just with your experience growing up, I don't know, but for me, I didn't think my experience here in the Black community was like particularly unique in the sense of I didn't feel like I was coming from poverty, or I didn't feel like I was necessarily disadvantaged until I got a scholarship and was able to go to like private school here. And then I realized like, oh, wait, white people here are living a whole different life than I am. Yeah. And I didn't see that until I like ended up going to private school. And I don't know if I didn't do that, if I wouldn't have just like kind of been in. I just think we built such a strong community around ourselves that felt insular and felt kind of safe almost at the time anyway to me, that I don't know how to explain what I'm trying to say, but I felt like kind of insulated in my community and supported by my community in a way that was good. And I don't know if people or youth today like still have that, and that's why I want to like get into what we want to talk about. But I just felt that sense of community around me and so proud and like happy, and everybody kind of was like living their best Black life in a way that I didn't feel like there was anything wrong. I didn't feel like I didn't feel like we were being disadvantaged at the time, because it just felt like we just were making do with what we had. And maybe that's like partly trauma response, partly Black resilience, right? But it felt that way. And then I got into other parts of the world and I'm like, whoa, you know what I mean? It was like a shock. I don't know if you had that experience, or I just am wondering, especially now that we're going to talk about youth in comparison to today. And I don't think they have that. I don't think they feel that way. So do you think there is that difference? Do you think we did used to kind of have that type of community structure? And do we not have it today? And why do you like think that is?
I think that in the middle of my childhood is when there was a shift. I do think that very early on in the beginning, I did feel that like community structure. Yeah. And I think that's just because folks had the capacity to kind of be the village and, take care of each other, be out on porches, et cetera, et cetera. Right. But as I got older, especially as I went on to high school, I started to see more of a shift where that just wasn't happening as much. And I think that has been an even bigger shift now that I've grown into an adult, because I feel like a lot of the youth around them, a lot of the youth here in Buffalo, they have people of older generations around them who are in support of them, whatever, who are nurturing them. But there is a lack of resources.
Okay.
And the lack of resources are continuing to decrease.
Yeah.
That's why you see a difference in how the elder generations were able to show up for me and you versus how the elder generations are not necessarily able to show up because of capacity for younger generations.
Yeah. And I think... we're talking about this specifically in a youth services sense, and I want to get to that. But I think also, like, when I was younger, it just was easier to kind of get by in life, even as an adult. And I think my mom and my godmother and other people had the capacity to give attention to me because they weren't stressed about bills. And maybe they were, but it wasn't as stressful as it is today, where rent is $1,500 and things like that. Like rent still then was like $450 or whatever, and you could figure out how to scrape it together and take your kids to the zoo or go to the Strong Museum or whatever you had to do. But now it's harder and harder to even like feed your kids or get groceries, let alone, give them that other support. And there were spaces that we could go without the need of their supervision, that were safe, that they knew they could be like, just be back by sunset or whatever, the street light thing, come back. But now there isn't that. Like, where can youth go today? Which I think is partly what we want to talk about, is where are youth spaces today? Do they exist? In your opinion, like, is that a thing? Like, I don't know where young people go today. You can't even go to the mall anymore by yourself, which I did all the time when I was in like teen. And that, like you said, started to shift even when I was a teenager. I think by senior year, like, I could not go by myself. And and I was waiting because it was going to be 18 where you could go. And then they changed it to 21 because there was a few fights or whatever was going on.
Now you got to be accompanied by...
And now it's just... If you look young, get out.
Yes,
like, there's
absolutely.
not even, I don't even think they're checking the IDs anymore. I don't even see those security guards in the mall anymore, or whatever used to be there. So what do we do, and how did it used to look? Because I know when I was way younger, there was like community centers that were always open. You could go get free lunch. You could even get snacks. It wasn't even just like the free lunch. I remember, like, if they had extra milk or ice cream cups or fruit cups, you were going in there, you were having a snack, you were chilling. You were going to the pool, you were going to the sprinklers, which were fully open and functioning back in the day. No shade, little shade. But all those things don't exist now. So where are youth supposed to go? Where do they go?
So I know, back in like my sister's day, for reference, my sister is like 16 years older than me. From what I know from my mom, there were like a lot of youth programming and community centers that my sister was able to go to back in her day. And my mom was a single mom at the time. So she really needed those spaces. So somewhere she could go and like not be supervised by someone else while my mom was in work and school. Whereas when I was growing up, that was kind of a thing, but not so much. That's not something that I experienced. There were community spaces that were open, but they were open for a limited amount of time. And they weren't too welcoming to young people. They were more willing to, no shade at all, love our seniors, but they were more willing to serve our seniors. Now, today, they mostly serve our seniors. And if a young person like me walks in there, or a younger person walks in there, they don't really have much to give them because there's not much youth programming there, or there isn't, someone from the community working there that is welcoming, because community members don't want to work in community centers because they don't hire at a living wage. So that's the thing. A couple years ago, I used to work at the Buffalo Area County Public Library, and that was kind of the space that I would see a lot of young people hanging out at. I used to work at the one on Jefferson, the Meriwether Library, and they were open until 8 o'clock a lot of times. So a lot of the young people would be there. But now, because of how our youth have been kind of like criminalized over the past couple years,
right,
with some of the incidents that have happened at different locations, like including the library downtown, they've been kind of like pushed out.
Yep.
So when it comes to where did they go? They either go to the streets or inside.
Yeah.
Which is a recipe for disaster.
Of course. It's because it's isolating them from each other. On top of this is a generation that went through the pandemic and had to do school for almost 2 years on a computer screen, didn't get to interact with their friends, anything like that. And I've just seen a marked difference even in the socialization of younger people today and their social emotional regulation. Like at the end of the day, like it really impacts. I mean, I think social media already was going to have an impact, but then that extra isolation on top of that, plus there being no spaces. And I think even like I said, the mall and spaces that were quote unquote safe when I was younger, it shifted to even then a kind of criminalization. Because if you were caught in the mall without the supervision or whatever, they assume you're stealing. They assume you're doing something else, even when you weren't. And so at a certain point, you're going to rise to meet expectations, like I think is the other thing. Because I think there's a lot of older people that write it off on youth today don't have manners. Youth today are bad. Youth today, blah, blah, blah. And they blame it on the youth, which I think is crazy.
Which who raised them. But if that's the case.
What environment are you making? Why are they like this? It's literally all environmental impact. But and so how are we creating and how are we investing, or rather right now divesting from youth? And I don't think even if you have certain emotions about how youth are today or opinions or whatever, what are you doing about it?
Right.
Like I hear a lot of people complaining about the way youth are today, but they're not willing to invest anything to change it either.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what your plank really is asking for. And I just wanted you to get into really quick, like, what is the direct ask that you're seeking from the city to try and address, or begin, rather, to address it? Because I don't think it's going to be an all-in-one fix, but, like, what's that ask you're asking right now to start in the right direction?
Yeah. So for those who don't know, pretty much every year for the past couple years, the city has invested about $3 million, a little less than that, in youth programming, and the Mayor Summer Youth program as well. But our ask is for them to actually invest $10 million. And in that $10 million, that will include increasing the funding for the Mayor Summer Youth program, and also increasing funding for people who are already doing youth programming here in the city, and providing some sort of capacity building for the community centers that exist here. That would look like making sure they're fully funded so they can provide salaries with a living wage so that folks in community could actually work there, which means our young people would be more willing to go there. That looks like updating the buildings. And that looks like being open for longer as well, because we know that statistics show that when juvenile violence does happen in cities such as Buffalo, they happen between 2 p.m. and 12 p.m. 12 a.m., excuse me. And a lot of times community spaces aren't open during that time.
Yeah.
So that $7 million increase would be really significant for our young people, especially our Black and brown young people.
Absolutely. And just to highlight, because I know some people are going to be like, well, I've seen such and such program, or I've seen this and that, but the capacity of some of the programs that do exist, the few, are so limited. Like, I know you've tried to get your kid into an after school program and it was full. Yep. I know even with Mayor Summer Youth, you were like, oh, wait, hold on, let me fill out this application. Were no more placements. Yep. There has to be more invested into youth, and the amount of youth we have in Buffalo in comparison to $3 million, it's not enough. It just isn't, point blank, period. And so we have the opportunity to upgrade the buildings, because we all know that they've been the same since. I mean, I think even when I was younger, some of the water fountains my mom or my grandma was talking about, they was drinking out of, right? Or whatever. So if they were old in the 90s, early 2000s, how old are they now? It's 2024, y'all. So, there's some of that too. And honestly, some of even the splash pad things and stuff like that, those are really for the young kiddos, right? And like, I remember when I was younger, there was maybe even like swim lessons, like you could go to the pools. It was well staffed. Other programming that I used to go to, the city courts used to have a program called Youth Court that was in partnership with the city. And that was during the school year. This was outside of summer. This was outside of summer youth. I was going after school to the city courts to do essentially mock trial. I don't know if people have heard of that, but you go, you learn. One of you takes on the role of a lawyer. One of you may be a plaintiff. One of you may be whatever, defendant. One can be the judge. And you learn about the court system. You learn about, penalties even too, so that you can understand what is the juvenile system. And I found at the time, they really approached it in a way of restorative justice in terms of trying to tell us like, this is how this happens, and this is how easily your life could be ruined. And it, no, were they trying to reform it at the time? No, but they were exposing us to understand, like, this is what happens. And I think for me and the few youth that I was with at the time that went through that, it was really impactful in us understanding how a little mistake could change the trajectory of our lives. And I think impacting a youth in that way is huge, because right now, like I said, a lot of people are complaining about youth behavior and things like that. But do they really know what the consequences are? Whatever, who's talking to them about any of this, right? And so, of course, they're going to make decisions that aren't great because they don't know anything else. And all of those were city-funded programs at the time. And so where did they go? Like, it's just like, where did they go? And I did Mirror Summer Youth too, and that was a robust program then, but but we also had these other things. Yeah. And so we can do both. I know we can do both because both were happening. But how can we get back to that, right? I think is like what we're trying to figure out now. So I would love for listeners to, if they hear this and want to kind of help with this or have some input or feedback, to please contact us at info@ppgbuffalo.org. But I don't know, Alia, if there's anything else you want to add about what else we can be doing today that will help at least start on the trajectory of us changing. Like, what kind of programs would you like to see the city doing that can kind of get back to where we were in terms of support of young people? What can we implement to kind of begin that process?
Yeah, I think to start, we need to do a better job of employing our young people, especially all year round. Our young people are definitely willing to work and want to work. A lot of times, unfortunately, our youth are paying into the household, so whether it be paying for groceries, paying utility bills, rent, etc., especially these days. So they are looking to have some sort of income. Not only just hiring them, also providing youth programming that they actually want to be a part of, whether it be a youth programming around mental health or arts and wellness. These are like skills that our young people are looking to obtain and looking to engage with. Instead of some of the youth programming that we have today. So thinking more creatively and out of the box, and also listening to our young people. Yeah. This initiative isn't something that I came up with in my brain, although it was something that I have thought about years and years. It's actually something that came out of listening with young people. So that's ultimately where it starts. Our youth are looking to be heard. They're looking to be seen. So I think that's what we need to do more of as elder generations.
Absolutely. And like, youth will tell you what they want to do. Because at the end of the day, it is a new generation. And it's some of the stuff we were doing before. Like, maybe youth now don't want to go to youth court. That's fine. I think one of the biggest things that I saw, like you talked about working in the library downtown, when they opened up that little recording studio.
Yes.
I saw so many of us in there. I mean, they opened it even when I was a little bit younger. So, I had some guy friends that are like, I'm about to go lay down, whatever. And I was like, okay. But, but at the end of the day, they were doing that instead of feeling like they had to go with their cousin on the block. You know what I'm saying? Yep. So at the end of the day, like, it is an alternative. And we've seen how, especially like arts programs and differential outlets and creative means, changes people's lives that are currently in the streets. Like, we just know that that's something that works and that happens. It's been tested for decades now. Yeah. And so I think another thing that the city could invest more into is creative type arts programming for young people. And there's small nonprofits that kind of do it. But I don't think all of those are necessarily targeted towards people that look like us or inner city, underserved, underprivileged youth.
Yes.
A lot of programs want a lot of parent involvement, need some sort of investment from the family. And at the end of the day, like, not everybody's going to have that. And I think the majority of kids in the city don't have that. One, support system, two, financial support at the very least. So what can we do to fill that gap? And I think the city really could be taking a larger role in addressing some of those things. And I think that's what they were doing before, is that they realized that, especially with an administration that is technically of community, to know that that's what we need and address it in that way, I think would just be so culturally relevant to us and a lot more impactful. So I hope that they're able to kind of take up some of that. But we were thinking about, and you've already been doing listening sessions with youth. I don't know if there's kind of anything you want to say to listeners about maybe something we're thinking about doing in the future, and any other feedback, I don't know, that you'd like from listeners about how they can listen to youth more. Any advice you have for people on that, and where they can kind of store their energy in trying to support youth a little bit more too.
Yeah, I will say we are definitely looking to do listening sessions in the different community centers, especially the ones around the east side. So if you're interested in attending, I would follow Voice Buffalo on all platforms as well as PPG, so you can attend, especially if you're in that community. As far as listening to young people, I would listen first. Listen, obviously, to not like react, but to hear, not even to respond. Because I know a lot of people say, listen to respond, not to react. No, listen to hear first and listen to understand first. Because a lot of times our young people feel like they don't want to talk to people of elder generations because of fear of what reaction or response they might have. So just be patient with them. And be honest with them, because they'll be honest with you. Trust me. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I love that you said that. Maybe don't even respond. Maybe just listen, ponder, think about it, digest it a little bit. I think, we're part of the first generation that's like, oh, we should listen to younger people than us, right? No, that might be a kind of muscle that some people need to kind of stretch out, exercise a little bit. But you do learn a lot from people that are younger. And I even found me, like, I'm still in my 20s and I'm like, I don't want to listen to a teenager. But like, you need to. Yeah. And they really have a good perspective. And especially the generation now, I find, are a lot more informed than you think they are.
Yes.
I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to leave it at that. Our young people are very wise today. Maybe not wise in years, but definitely wise with information.
Yeah.
So with that, that's the end of our show. Thank you so much, Alia, for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it. Let's do this for the young people. Hopefully we can get it done. This is Dejia James with Partnership for the Public Good, or PPG, uniting over 340 organizations working to build a better Buffalo. And we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on youth today? What can we be doing to support them more? Contact us at info@ppgbuffalo.org. Thank you so much. This is The Public Good, Tuesday mornings, 11:30 a.m. on Power 96.5 FM and Mix 1080 a.m.